ever been kneecapped by a bird before? Want to find out what it's like?
I've actually been thinking about it a lot.
I'm legally distinct. Could have made these guys millions.
Specifically magic, because my buddy Orville, he's a magician. And there's a lot of argument in the world about
look who needs a handicap.
The believability of magic, whether or not it can even be a real thing. And for me, magic is strange. I've heard about all sorts of different things and all sorts of spiritual, strange subjects. Like,
I should swear
sure I've heard something about remnant being uttered here and there. That's here, no there. I don't really understand any of that. What I do understand is card games. And the card games have been getting really popular recently. For example, I can't, it's something to do with magic, I believe. But I've been seeing some of the kids' older brothers and sisters
three games of experience, and this is all they could do?
Of the restaurant. And I thought it was interesting, and I had a closer look every once in a while, and they would show me the ropes. And I gotta say, card games have been getting really complicated. You know, back in my day, we used to just play blackjack, poker, go fish, and tiddlywinks or whatever. And it's interesting how complicated modern things can really get. Like, have you ever tried to use a computer? Of course you have. It's a part of your job, but there's so much.
Hey, I'll say the age-appropriate drinks like for $20. What I mean, computer CPU
options, all sorts of little applications, I believe they're called. That, you know, programs just you can watch moving pictures, you can listen to music. It's insane. It's like I couldn't believe my eyes. You know, what's next, right? Anyway,
jeez, can you get jump scared already?
I was also
falling
thinking
asleep
about,
over here.
Where was I? Hey, you know what? Maybe it'll come back to me later. I'll see you around.
You know, this isn't actually live commentary. I'm just repeating the same couple canned lines over and over. You'll have to subscribe to Rodney Plus if you want that. Wondered how long it took me to record all these lines? I don't remember, but it was probably long. I should be making these schmucks pay me extra.
Well, am I glad to see you? You know, I had actually been thinking about it a lot recently. Specifically magic, because my buddy Orville, he's a magician. And there's a lot of argument in the world about the believability of magic, whether or not.
Man, if only my pal Buddy was here.
And for me, magic is.
He'd be flying around the room, knocking stuff over, yelling in a panic.
All sorts
It'd be
of
great.
Things, all sorts of spiritual, strange subjects. Like, pretty sure I've heard something about remnant being uttered here and there. But that's here, no there. I don't really understand any of that. What I do understand is card games. And the card games have been getting really popular recently. For example, I can't...
You can double those earnings if you take them to the casino.
I believe. But I've been seeing some of the kids' older brothers and sisters playing in the big kids section of the restaurant. And I thought it was interesting. And I had a closer look every once in a while, and they would show me the ropes. And I gotta say, card games have been getting really complicated. You know, back in my day, we used to just play blackjack and poker and go fish and tiddlywinks or whatever. And it's interesting how complicated modern things can really get. Have you ever tried to use a computer? Of course you have. It's a part of your job, but there's so much to do. You open the menus and it just hits you with a wave of options. All sorts of little applications, I believe they're called. That, you know, programs just you can watch moving pictures, you can listen to music. It's insane. I couldn't believe my eyes. what's next, right?
I've run out of things to say.
Anyway,
That's how uninteresting this is.
So I was also thinking about... where was I? Hey, you know what? Maybe I'll... it'll come back to me later. I'll see you around.
God, you can really see how much this game suffered from feature creep. I mean, just look at me. Listen, you're not cut out for this. Hand me the keyboard.
See,
now this game should have been in the fan.
You know, it's
Because
been a
it's
while
good.
since
Because I
we
can't
last
listen to
spoke. How's the job treating you? Things going well? You know, thinking about meeting up with old friends after a while. I met up with my old friend Montgomery Gator. You know, people know him as Monty. It's his stage name for that whole Rockstar gig. But ever since he picked up that Rockstar gig, he never really had time for any of his old friends or hanging out. And, you know, I was okay with this. However, the other day, he called
Really gonna do 5
and
nights of
asked,
this?
"Hey, Monty,
is not too
I mean
nice.
Hippo, you wanna catch up and go fishing?" Now, of course, I couldn't say no to that, so I packed my fishing gear. I put it on the back of the truck, and I drive over to where he said to meet up, which was this old shack a couple counties over. Now, I don't know why he'd asked me to drive so far.
I don't know about
The
you,
old shack
but I
was
could go for
stationed
some
right
alcohol,
next to this
simulated
old,
gambling,
pond.
animated
Big-
blood, and comic
And he
mischief
stated
right
that
about
it
now.
was a very, very good pond for fishing. But I digress. So I drive over. I meet him over at the old shack. Creepy old shack it was. Covered in mold, the wood was barely holding together, and there was spider webs everywhere. And I'd asked him, "Hey, Monty, is this your shack?" And I assume he didn't hear me, because instead of answering my question, he looked over to me and held
You know,
up
I'm
this
the one
big
carrying
burlap
this
sack
whole
he
game.
was
They
carrying.
should make
And
me
he
a
said,
makeshift plushie.
Hey, Hippo, could I get a quick hand chucking this here bag of compost into the pond?
Now, of course, not much of a botanical man myself, so I had to ask, why would you need to fertilize a pond? Nothing's growing in there. And Monty, he looked over to me, looked away, looked over to me again, looked at the bag, looked at me, and he said, well,
Let me guess, this is your first time playing?
Seaweed
No?
at the bottom of the pond here.
That's
and,
embarrassing.
It's good for the fish.
And of course, who am I to question a man who's grown up around bodies of water his whole life? So, I obliged and helped him chuck the bag into the river. But I couldn't help but notice these two lumps on the bag. Kind of reminded me of rabbit ears they did. So I asked her, "Hey, Auntie, why is the bag so lumpy?" And he responded,
I thought dead animal or something. Yeah, dead rabbit.
Just
A little
watch me.
rabbit got into the
Raise
bag.
me
It's,
$35,000,
you know what
and I'll
happens every
show
once in a
you.
while, but caucuses are good for the pond.
Now, again, I'm not one to question my friend's knowledge, so I just wave it off and help chuck it into the pond. And almost at the very moment the bag touches the water, he looks over to me and he's like,
Hey, thanks. Wonderful help. I gotta go
Alright,
now.
here's a really
Now.
cool challenge you can try.
And,
Beat the
you know,
night
I
with the
chime
audio
in, I
music,
say,
your
well,
monitor
are we
off,
here to go
and the
fishing?
computer unplugged.
and you know, he looks over to me and he says,
Well, I forgot my fishing rod.
and I point over to the stand that I bring just in case, you know, my rod snaps. And he scratches scratches the back of his head and responds,
Well, there's no fish left in the water. There's a fish pandemic.
and, again, not really wanting to question my friend's knowledge, so I shrug and get back in the truck, drive
Hey,
home.
no pressure, but my boss bet a couple thousand on you,
back on it,
and he doesn't
Monty
like the
was
looks.
acting awfully neurotic that day. He was looking over his shoulder all the time and asked me if I'd been followed. And, a lot of mannerisms that actually reckon back to old Pig Patch days as interesting character.
Nah, beginner's luck.